Hey guys, so today we are answering a subscriber question, and the question in question was, Frederick, what dependencies do you usually use when you work? So let's get into it. Now, the reason why I'm getting this question is because a lot of people, I've had a few discussions with people on the forum, on my comment section, and I've talked quite a lot about that as I work, I try to be as Spartan as I can to an extent. Of course, I mean, there are of course people who are a lot more extreme than I am when it comes to keeping things as simple as possible. It's just that most of these this topic of discussion comes kind of around whenever we talk about front-end matters. I usually don't have this question when we talk about back-end stuff, but it is because I think that I'm a little bit of a, I'm not going to say special case, but I've seen things and I've been through things that have made me change my perspective on what seems to be the norm within the JavaScript community. And the norm within this JavaScript community a lot of the times is that all libraries are useful, and that, you know, newer is better, and trends are something to, you know, kind of go with, and whatever somebody says on a blog post, people kind of just try out. It's a very experimental and experimenting ecosystem, if you will. And although that is useful to a point, it's also something that I'm not going to say I haven't outgrown it, because there are a lot of useful tools, but I have realized very quick after being very fortunate to meet a personal career coach for me, or rather somebody who I truly look up to very early in my career, who has been working for so many years. And it's why I truly urge you to always consider every perspective. You know, there are these programmers who will be naysayers to a lot of the trends, and, you know, be very conservative. And although they can't always win the battle, I think that you should always listen to them, because there are some very valuable learnings to get from whoever is, you know, if it's a voice of experience, you should always listen. And in this case, I was very lucky that I did, because I very quickly understood that one of the biggest problems within frontend is that the legacy problem, as we all know, most of the JavaScript projects out there in the world are truly horrendous. It seems to be the case that you accumulate legacy faster in JavaScript than any other language. And one of the biggest contributing factors, I will argue, is this obsession with tooling that we have in this community, where people just add in libraries left and right, and this thing, you know, it is what I call, I call it the Wild West, because that is what it is. It's a very unstructured working environment. So the tools that I use, if we just talk about my own projects, a lot of the stuff that I do here on the channel, and, you know, for my own personal project. If we're just in JavaScript land, I don't use more than, I think it's Node, React, TypeScript, and the TypeScript compiler ideally, Webpack, React Router. I might use NodeMon just to keep to recompile the server if I need that, if it's all in JavaScript. And then I use PostCSS without much, and for the Webpack I really only use the TS loader if I don't need something special. I don't use CSS modules or anything like all of these other things. I actually just run PostCSS CLI as a separate process, and then that's pretty much my entire workflow. And I use Express, of course, for my Node development. And that is pretty much, if I don't forget something, well, I use Git, of course, and, you know, text editor, Visual Studio Code, and all of this good stuff. But that is pretty much my stack. For database concerns, I use Mongoose for the most part, since MongoDB is it's a very good fit for a lot of these smaller projects that I work on. And for the most part, that's got me kind of set. And apart from that, I don't really use all that much. If I do test-driven development, maybe I use Jest and just Jest. I don't really feel the need to have a lot of these other tools that a lot of people opt into, simply because either I don't feel that they're all that valuable to me, or I feel that I can either build it myself or something that is exactly the thing I need, as opposed to using something somebody else built. And the reason why I have this structure is because I've realized that it's very similar to, well, the way I think about it is that every library you add, every dependency you have, the more strings you attach to your process, the more parts you have. The more parts you have within the system that can move about, the likelier you are to have issues of some sort, especially when things start to scale up. And what's really dangerous is when, I mean, this is just me and for my own small project, but what gets really dangerous is when you have that sort of ecosystem or this mindset when you get to be a company. Because if you have no overall architecture for how you structure your code, you are going to have legacy problems. And this is kind of why I've never seen a good JavaScript project. I feel very confident that it is possible to make a really strong working JavaScript project, but it's very tricky to find one at all because of this problem we have where for some reason people to start off with have this need to have all of these different libraries and all these small convenience tools that really is more about developer experience rather than value added to the product. And that's in my world, a very bad trade. I try to keep keep these dependencies as low as possible, because as soon as you depend on somebody else's code, it's just a matter of time before you will find some type of issue with it. There are projects, as I said, like React Router is not necessarily a hard requirement, but because it's such a big and fundamental part of the React ecosystem, I feel that I need it myself, because I wouldn't be able to write such a solution myself, and it's a very well supported library. But there are tons of other tools within that ecosystem, like that everybody hypes and thinks is amazing, that I wouldn't even touch. Not because they are bad tools, it's just that I don't need them in order for me to be pretty much as productive as everybody else. To this day, I still haven't really found anybody who uses all of these libraries to be able to definitively prove to me that they are more productive than I am when I just use a smaller set. They might be happier, or they tell themselves, I don't know, they might be just happier as developers because they can use all of their nice tools. All I see, however, is that at some point, somebody else within the company loses productivity because of the decisions that they made on behalf of everybody to make themselves more productive. And the one fundamental truth that my old coworker really told me was that because of this idea of having all of these libraries, what's actually going to happen is that you will simply pay back. You will create legacy at some point. It's just a matter of time. The more like at some point, it doesn't matter if it's like next week or 10 years. At some point, all of these strings that you have attached to your project is going to, in some fashion, start to slow you down. The less strings you have and the more code that you wrote yourself, the easier it is for you to extend things, assuming that you keep your, assuming of course you take care of your code base. So what I want you to take away from this is that this idea that there is no cost to having a lot of dependencies is absolutely false. The idea, especially in front end, should be to have the minimum amount of dependencies possible to be productive. The less you have, the better, because you will, although maybe you might create a situation where you create some value for yourself because of that convenience library that you added in and everybody is excited about it. But the problem is that although that might make you a little bit more productive, it's very likely that either it will cause an issue in the future, or you will simply trade your own happiness and productivity for the loss of somebody else's productivity. So remember that whenever, just take that with you. It's something that has colored a lot of the decisions that I make when I pick my tools. And I would consider myself to be fairly conservative. I'm open to new ideas, but I am conservative when I make decisions on tooling, especially if I'm not the only developer on the project. Because I always remember, if I'm not the only person working on this, I need to consider everybody's productivity, not just my own. Have a great day.